This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Loving Animals. I'm Dr. Robin Ganser, your host and the president and CEO of American Humane, our country's first national humane organization. Oh, this week, friends, we're revisiting one of my favorite episodes, our interview with Zach Skow, an incredible animal lover. Zach established Marley's Mutts Dog Rescue, a nonprofit that helps dogs with special needs and histories of abuse and neglect. And friends, Zach knows a thing or two about that amazing bond that can develop between stray animals and their loving rescuers. He's the adopted dad of Hooch, a former stray who was so starved and badly abused before his rescue. But there's a great ending to the Hooch story. We can't forget how Zach and Hooch attended American Humane's 2016 Hero Dog Awards in Los Angeles, and Hooch walked away with the top prize, Hero Dog of the Year. After this quick break, we'll hear from Zach and Hooch, and friends, you don't want to miss this. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of Loving Animals. We'll be right back with Zach.
Hey, cat people. Litter box smells always on your mind? Think about your cat, not the box, with World's Best Cat Litter, the litter that delivers big odor control in a tiny package. World's Best Cat Litter harnesses the concentrated power of corn to trap odors deep inside the litter. Ready to knock out smells and use less litter? Find World's Best Cat Litter at Target, Walmart, and in your local grocery and pet stores.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Hooch is in the house. Yes, the 2016 Hero Dog of the Year, Hooch, is with us, and his pet parent, Zach Skow. Everyone fell in love with Zach and Hooch's story at the 2016 American Humane Hero Dog Awards. How could you not? When you see that incredible dog and Zach's incredible inspirational story and journey, we all felt our hearts just grow 2 times larger during that time together. And I'm so thrilled that Zach has joined us today to give us an update on Hooch and to share a little bit about Marley's Mutts. Zach, welcome.
Howdy.
Howdy. How is it today in your wonderful hometown?
Oh, everything's terrific. We got a lot moving and shaking. We just added a couple dogs that we picked up at the airport from China. So getting them integrated into the pack, and we got, there's a lot going on up here.
Wow, dogs from China. Tell me a little bit about what's going on with your work with those dogs.
Well, we partner with an organization called Animal Hope and Wellness Foundation. Our friend Mark Ching has been, I originally went to Korea 2.5 years ago to do some dog meat trade kind of investigation and rescue work. So I was over there for a couple of weeks. We made trips to Thailand and a few other places and came back with bunches and bunches of dogs, and I've kind of been embroiled in the dog meat trade ever since and wanting to make a difference. So he recently came back from Yulin on Sunday with some dogs from slaughterhouses and from the Yulin Dog Meat Festival, and we're trying to help bring awareness to the topic of the dog meat trade, and as well as adopt out and train a lot of these dogs that need some structure. And believe it or not, we actually are sending these dogs to prison, to one of our 4 prison programs here in the state of California. So a handful of these slaughterhouse survivors are, ironically enough, heading back inside prison.
Wow, but in a different way, that's for sure. Zach,
Yeah,
I had no idea you were doing this kind of work with the dog meat trade. Just a few weeks ago, there were a lot of social media activity, actually a frenzy of activity, announcing that the Yulin meat trade had shut down. They were not going to do this year's festival, and yet we never received official confirmation from the Chinese government. And of course, what do we know now? They opened up the festival, and it was profitable, which is scary for all of us animal lovers. Tell us what you know, the inside scoop. What's going on with the Yulin meat trade?
Well, that's exactly what I heard 2 weeks before it started. So when all the buzz, was hitting social media and the airwaves that, Yulin had come to some sort of agreement, the city of Yulin and officials had come to some sort of agreement based on pressure from activists to bring the brutal practice to an end. Everyone kind of rejoiced and said, "Hey, almost like no need to worry. It's taken care of." And I think that was exactly their tactic. And I talked to Mark before he headed over, and that's exactly what he said: is this is all a front. There's no way that it's over. They've been in negotiations with different provincial and city and local government officials, and his take on it was that they're definitely not yet to banning the practice, and that a lot more work needs to be done, and just as much of a presence needed to be there this year as in past years. And I think that we basically got faked out,
Right. That's a good way to put it. Faked out, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
what we can do, and I know what American Humane is involved in, and what we all can do is open up. I mean, we're not going to save them, one adoption at a time. That's not going to obviously be a proper tactic and a strategy to end the dog meat trade. We really have to put pressure on politically, which I know they're doing. There's groups like, I Stand With My Pack and Animal Hope and Wellness Foundation and our own. What we just try to do is share on our own very large social media platforms the practice, what it is, what it consists of, and people can kind of get galvanized from that point on. And we do open up adoption channels because it is really important to showcase some of these dogs and their adoptability. Some of them have been through unspeakable tortures, and it's really remarkable that they can bounce back. The two that I have here, Saffron and Allie, are Allie was completely shut down, and we didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm thinking, man, I wonder if I can even let her off leash in the backyard, because even though we're fenced, I wonder if she's going to bolt. And then the next day, man, she just opened up her heart, and she's wiggling and learning how to play. I have a couple of happy-go-lucky dogs in my pack that kind of teach these shutdown dogs how to play. And man, I posted some of the videos to our social media at Marley's Mutts, and they're great. They're perfect family dogs. I mean, literally in 2 days of socialization, they are ready to go. They've been around big dogs, small dogs, all kinds of stuff. Working on, the leash, getting them used to a leash is probably the biggest challenge, but we are basically there. And again, we're only 2 days in. So.
Oh, Zach, I was in Hong Kong last fall, and I met with the World Dog Alliance, and they were giving us background in our work there about the meat trade, unfortunately, the dog meat trade. And what they were saying is that most of these dogs are actually family pets that have been kidnapped. And, and that to me is stunning. These are not dogs necessarily bred to be dog meat. Unfortunately, they're someone's pet has been kidnapped and stolen.
Yeah, I've been to a variety of places. That's exactly right. And it's you can definitely see that when you visit places like Korea. We spent several days combing the countryside about 3 hours outside of Seoul, and we found essentially amateur dog catchers who operated dog meat farms where they were both producing dogs for the dog meat trade and also, snatching up people's dogs. We brought home a golden retriever that we named Soul, who clearly was somebody's dog. We basically threatened to get him shut down, and Save Korean Dogs was able to get that farm shut down several months later.
Wonderful.
But that's exactly what it is. They get dogs by any means necessary. We went to restaurants that had little mini dog meat operations in the back of the restaurant where they were breeding dogs. We brought back several puppies that had been bred for just that. The literal translation of most of the dogs that are used in Korea is dogs are called narangi. The literal translation is shit dog. So they don't feel very, very highly about these particular dogs. They do have a very pronounced affinity for purebred dogs. There is a real big cultural paradigm shift happening in places like Korea where they really do care about their animals. There really is the young generation cares about their animals. I went to a place in Seoul, a big mall, that on the top floor of this mall was basically like a doggy Disneyland where you could go learn about the history of the dog. You could watch protection dog events. You could watch all kinds of different Frisbee events. Like they had every type of dog specialist and really it was just a showcase of the human-canine bond. It was beautiful. So you got a couple miles from there in downtown Seoul is one of the most notorious meat trade markets, on the planet, where I videotaped dogs being electrocuted, burned to death, and just a couple miles from there is a doggy Disneyland, the polar opposite of what was happening at this meat market. So it's just really a dichotomy that's hard to explain. A lot of it has to do with saving face and not wanting to acknowledge what the reality is for sake of accepting shame. Shame is a big thing in Asian culture that they want to stay away from acknowledging. They don't want to be painted with a broad brush. And, nobody does, but you have to acknowledge the problem before you can fix it.
That's exactly right. Zach, I've heard a lot of the debate in our country, particularly if you recall the Olympics in Russia when we were trying to bring the dogs back from there to dogs from the Yulon meat trade, that there's pushback. There's enough dogs in our country that need to be sheltered and rescued and given an opportunity for a forever loving home. How do you respond to that when people say that to you?
It's super easy for me. I mean, we get a lot of that flack as well. And for me, we have a very large social media platform of 600,000 followers that are very engaged and what's important to them is dogs and dogs everywhere. And so what we've made a point to do is try and highlight as many organizations as we can that do really good work that just don't have the social media support. So we have sister shelter operations in Romania. I just got back from Romania. We spent 10 days there rebuilding a shelter and doing 7 straight days of spay and neuter. We spay and neutered 300 dogs.
Wow.
And we've been to Soy Dog Foundation a couple of times. We've been to, out to Korea, and we're working on something in Puerto Rico for this November. And the whole point is that there's a lot of, we should push the plight of the dog anywhere and everywhere. Man's best friend deserves to be advocated for wherever and whenever possible. And we are in, Kern County, one county north of Los Angeles, where, we, when I first started Marley's Mutts, there was 83% euthanasia, which is upwards of 25,000 dogs annually in our county, which is not a very big county. I mean, it's a large county square mileage-wise, but we're very poor. We're nothing like Los Angeles County. And we've transitioned to a no-kill movement. We've got a no-kill movement, and so believe you me, we're doing our best to save the dogs here. And we have an elaborate foster network set up, and we're closing escrow on our rescue ranch, hopefully here in the next week. So there's a lot. We like to advocate wherever we can be effective. And a guy by the name of Dr. A. Richard Grossman, founder of the Grossman Burn Centers, taught me that wherever you can be of assistance, you should. And he told me in response to an interview he did when he spent over $1 million on 2 burned dogs that we had rescued. They said, why did you spend, why on earth did the hospital, did the human hospital take in these 2 dogs to bring them back to life and spend untold hundreds of thousands of dollars on these dogs just to bring back a couple dogs? And he said, because we can. And that's my approach, is that because we can, we should. And if it's not going to take away from the work we have going here for our local dogs, I really think it's profound work. And we're also writing a book with our social media. We are essentially publishing a magazine and writing a book, and you have to try and keep things diverse, and you have to try and keep things lively and keep things interesting. And if you focus on only one thing, you're not going to get the followers that you need to. And those followers are the people that generate donations. Those followers are the people that generate adoptions. So, for every 100,000 people that we had viewing our Romania posts to check in on Romania, they're also on there looking at our adoptable dogs. So whenever our numbers tick up in circulation, that's going to translate to adoptable dogs locally. So there's a formula you have to apply, and I have zero shame about helping dogs elsewhere in the world. We've brought dogs back from Iraq, Iran, India. We've advocated in Afghanistan. We've done, dogs from Thailand, Korea, Mexico, all over the place, and it's and because we can,
And because compassion knows no boundaries. And you certainly are the epitome of that spirit, and you're an inspiration, Zach.
I'm sure you guys get the same thing, where it's like, hey, a lot of people will give you almost insulted at the fact that you're pushing the agenda of the human-canine bond instead of the human-human bond. They want you to be working with kids. And you can tell them, I can show them our educational programs until we're blue in the face working with children, and they'll still, at the end of the day, say, I believe this money should be spent on kids. And I just try and politely tell these people, you're in the wrong forum, you're following the wrong page.
We think there just needs to be a lot more resources for all of the vulnerable, all the voiceless. And certainly we see this in today's challenging and politically polarizing times. Zach, you have an amazing personal story that's inspired your advocacy platform, inspired you being a humane hero to so many who follow you and support you. I'd like for you to visit with us about your personal journey after our break. But before we go to our commercial break, can you give us your website where people can learn more and make a donation to Marley's Mutts?
Absolutely. The website is marleysmutts.org, MarleysMutts.org.
And they can follow you on Facebook at Marley's Mutts?
Yeah, Marley's Mutts Dog Rescue on Facebook, Marley's Mutts on Instagram, and Marley's Mutts on Twitter, or Dog Rescue on Twitter.
That's wonderful. Well, friends, you must go to Marley's Mutts, and it's a fantastic organization to support. We're going to be right back after this brief commercial break to hear more about Zach's personal journey. Friends, you must join us after this break. It's powerful. Be back in a minute.
We'll be right back, right after these messages. Stay tuned.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynovite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynovite.
Dynovite is nutrition.
Pick up 2 bottles of Lico Chops, get the 3rd bottle free.
New improved Lico Chops with omega-3, omega-6, vitamin E.
And now, 6 extra direct-fed microbials.
Even better for the digestive tract and immune system.
Try Lico Chops. Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynovite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Loving Animals. We are so thrilled today to have a very special guest. Zach Skow is an inspiration. He's a passionate animal advocate, and if you were listening to us right before the break, you heard about his incredible worldwide effort to uplift the healing power of the canine-human bond. And Zach, I love your work around the world. Romania sounds fascinating, the efforts to spay neuter, your work with China and Korea, amazing. But Zach, I know that you started out probably on a different path, and I'm not sure if you started out thinking that you would change the world for animals. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and what inspired you to do what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a long version and an abridged version. I'll try and keep it short. But
somewhere in between is great because you've got a lot of amazing lessons learned that I think all of us can learn from.
Yeah, there definitely is. My struggle. My struggle has been kind of lifelong, but my struggle as it pertains to finding my purpose began in 2008. I was diagnosed with end-stage liver disease, and acute kidney disease, so basically liver and kidney failure. And I was given less than 90 days to live without a liver transplant, and I wasn't going to get a liver transplant because I was an alcoholic and a drug addict. Mm-hmm. And in order to qualify for transplant, you need 6 months sober. So I was, I spent almost 2 months in the hospital with kind of no hope, no end in sight, and I'm really just waiting to either go home for hospice or to pass away.
How old were you then, Zach?
I was 28 years old. I turned 29 in the hospital.
Oh, my goodness. 28 years old.
Yeah, so that was the summer of 2008. I drank myself into liver failure because of, a variety of things. I believe that I'm genetically predisposed to alcoholism. I believe that there were a lot of things that were weighing on my soul and on my mind and on my heart that I didn't know how to express and remedy. And I, more than anything, I also didn't have any purpose. I lived a purposeless life and a very woe is me, sorry for myself existence. And it wasn't until I got my dad basically ripped all of my tubes and plugs out at Bakersfield Memorial Hospital and broke me out against doctor's will and took me to, against all medical advice, signing all the paperwork, basically not knowing if that was going to null our insurance, not knowing any of it, but he just knew I was getting sicker and sicker at the hospital, and he wanted to get me to a facility that did liver transplants. So he busted me out and took me to Cedars-Sinai, which is where I was born, here in Beverly Hills. And luckily, by the grace of God, I was admitted into the comprehensive transplant program under the careful watch of an incredible female transplant doctor and her staff who were just amazing. They took me off all my medicine. They took me off the painkillers that I'd become addicted to in the hospital, and they eventually sent me home. Her name was Dr. Tran, Tran.
Well, big shout out to her today, right?
Yeah, big time. She's a great lady. And by sending me home to go through opiate withdrawal at home and get me away from the drugs that were killing me in the hospital, that was the first step towards hope. And I got home, and really all I wanted to do was kill myself. I didn't know how to live without alcohol or drugs. I was about 140 pounds. I was bright yellow. I had a huge 9 months pregnant looking belly, that had been getting drained every few days. I had a catheter stuck in my back, basically, that was draining my stomach. It's called a paracentesis. And I was just dying. There's no other way to say it. I was just dying of liver failure. And in that state, really, everything goes wrong with you. You have ammonia buildup on your brain, so you don't know you're not cognitively very aware. I was very, I just looked like the sickest sick person you'd ever seen.
And so young, Zach, so young.
Yeah. I mean, I had been a 24-hour drinker for 5 years prior to that, and I had been an everyday drinker since I was 18. So, and I was consuming massive amounts of alcohol and drugs, so it wasn't for lack of, damaging my liver. I definitely put the work in. Ironically enough, my dad's dad had died of the same disease. His liver failed from alcoholism when my dad was 15. My dad didn't know his dad very well, and it was that man's 24-hour day book that I found when I was in recovery, when I had just gotten out of the hospital. I had found the book that he was reading the day he died, marked July 3rd, 1961. And I've held on to that book for a long time. It brings me a lot of strength. It brings me a lot of. I just feel like I'm his legacy, and I'm living out the life that he wished he could have. And I've kind of brought him back into my dad's life. My dad had never acknowledged his father. He hated his father. And so, I was able to find a God of my understanding that involved my ancestors, involved my grandfather. I found some dogs that understand me. And that's how I started to put one foot in front of the other. I started, after I stopped, I had fantasized about suicide for a long time. That's really all I thought about from sunup to sundown. And my dogs were looking at me every day, every single day was just the greatest day in the history of mankind. And they looked up at me with their tails wagging every day, what are we going to do today, Dad? What are we going to do today? Specifically Marley and Tug, and every day they would just look at me, and I'm looking at myself in the mirror, just dying, and having no self-worth, no self-confidence, extreme self-hatred, and my dogs were looking at me like I'm the world's most attractive man, both spiritually and physically, and the day is our oyster, and carpe diem 1,000 times over, and finally I just relented, and I started to journal, and we started to walk. We just started to walk. I couldn't even hold a leash. I was on crutches at the time, too, and we just started to walk. I took my dogs, and we just started to walk up here in the mountains. And a little walk became a little bit further, and I started walking about 4 times a day. Started writing in that journal about what I was feeling. Started taking pictures of the sunrise, and the rest is history. It just organically grew from that. I started to bring dogs into my pack, and I started to write stories about them. I started to take pictures of them and then put up their posters all over the place at the Baskin & Robbins, at the at the veterinary hospital, at the library. So people would gather around and see I had 13 dogs in my pack. And all of this, my only point of living is to try and make it 6 months sober so that I could qualify for transplant. That's my primary focus is getting healthy enough to take a liver transplant and to qualify. And so by the time I reached 6 months, I no longer needed a liver transplant. My body had started to heal itself.
Seriously?
I was still sick,
that's
amazing. I wasn't as sick as I obviously as I had been. And if you graphed it on a chart from 2008, from fall of 2008 until right now, my liver health and overall health has just increased and increased and increased. And I owe that all to the ability of my dogs to help get me out of myself, help me live in the day, in the moment, and help me stop feeling sorry for myself. And yeah, people wanted to be a part of it. I had a bunch of really cool people in my life that said, "Why don't you do this?" And I was like, "Do what?" They're like, "Rescue dogs." Like, man, I didn't even graduate college. I got kicked out of 2 colleges. I was a drug dealer, and I'm just a general, overall, just pretty awful human being. I mean, I've always had the scaffolding of a good human being. I've always been very compassionate. I've always been very loving. I've always cared for my friends, and I've never, my moral and ethical foundation is very sound. I just, drugs and alcohol lead you astray and take you away from your authentic self, and I didn't know that I could get it back. And not only did I get it back, I've been able to elaborate on it and find out a whole bunch about myself because of my dogs that has allowed me to love myself or at least tolerate myself. Whereas before I just absolutely hated myself. And
well, we all love you, Zach, I can tell you that. And we love you even more for sharing this incredible story. It's the frailty of the human condition. And you've explored this, and you've been so open and genuine and in your authentic voice. And what I love is that your story of hope and healing and compassion is because those dogs got you out of bed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they loved you unconditionally.
Totally, and also that I wouldn't change any of it. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh my God, you spent all this time in the hospital," and there's a bunch of suffering I left in there that I left out of there that's just almost too graphic to describe. You know, when your body's in liver failure, there's so many things that go wrong with you that are just disgusting, and it's really the depths of human just morbidity and patheticness. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but it's really an awful existence. And I know now that all that struggle was for a purpose, you know, and that was to find my worth and find my role in life and to find my purpose. And I think most people can relate to suffering and to struggle, and they might be going through it right now. And if they just can snap into view and into perspective and understand that whatever you're going through now is to help make you a better person in the long run and to help make you give you more depth as an individual, give your spirit better perspective, introduce you to things that you wouldn't have otherwise been introduced to, or to learn how to empathize, you know, to learn how to sympathize. And that's what all this did for me. You know, I'm almost 9 years clean and sober, and I wouldn't have done any of that unless I'd gone through this suffering.
That's right.
And I wouldn't change it for the world. I love that I'm sober. I love that I went through liver failure. I love that, you know, there's a lot of things that I had to address. I mean, I got to address all those things that weighed so heavily on me mentally. I wouldn't have addressed those things had I not gone through this. They would still be lingering, and I would have just slowly drank myself to death, or quickly drank myself to death, or be incarcerated or institutionalized.
Zach, you know, I want to talk about how you paid it forward, because the dog named Hooch came into your life, and you paid it forward with Hooch. And can you share with our listeners, those that didn't meet Hooch as our 2016 Hero Dog of the Year, but boy, did they ever miss out, and they need to go to see Hooch's tribute video and learn more about this very special dog that has touched so many people. Shared with us about how you paid it forward by helping Hooch.
Yeah, well, Hooch was that kind of dog that almost did it for you. You know, Hooch came to us, as most of our dogs do. We got a call from Animal Control with an image, and it said, this dog is a bully breed dog. He's here at the shelter. He's got pneumonia. We need your help. That's how we rescue a lot of our local dogs, is through advocates within Animal Control. And I should give a quick shout-out to Animal Control. Love your Animal Control. Respect your Animal Control. Shelter workers. Those people are on the front lines. They are our foot soldiers in the rescue world, and if we don't respect those people for what they have to go through daily, the whole system crumbles, and we cease to work together as a unit, as a team, if we ostracize and alienate our shelter workers. So people deserve a lot of love. So yeah, Hooch had an advocate, and we went down there to pick him up, and I could tell he was very, very skinny. I could tell he was very, very sick, but it wasn't until we took him to the hospital that we found out he didn't have a tongue. You don't think to look for that. His ears had been freshly severed, so we could tell his ears had been cut off. They were crusty and infected, but you just don't think to look at a dog. You don't think to look for the existence or lack of existence of a tongue. So it was very obvious that whomever had cut off his ears had cut off his tongue. And we just set to trying to figure out how to make him live. And so we gave him an esophageal feeding tube, which is just plugging a hole in his neck and providing a main line to the second stage of digestion, just basically plopping it right into his intestine, his stomach, from his esophagus. And tried to strategize from there, and everyone told us to euthanize him, and they said, you're just doing this for personal glory, and the dog's going to have no quality of life, and he's suffering, what are you doing? And we wanted to try and come up with a plan, and we got a Bailey's chair, which is for dogs with megaesophagus. Wonderful organization if you're able to follow Bailey's chairs on Instagram or Facebook, and that taught us how to feed him sitting upright, basically in like a seated position, you know, kind of one kibble at a time. He ended up ripping out his feeding tube and started drinking out of a mop bucket at the veterinary hospital. So we're like, hey, you can drink. You know, he just drinks like a horse. He submerges like half his face, and he just sucks. So he figured out how to drink. We figured out how to feed him, and then we just perfected feeding him. And then ever since then, he's been a normal dog. He loves kids. He loves being of service. Especially when it's not that hot out. It's only about 6 months out of the year. Being that he has no tongue, he can't regulate his body temperature, so it's difficult for him to be in hot climates. That's why right now he's inside, laying on the ground, just hanging out with the fan. But he loves to be of service. He loves to be around people. He loves to be around other dogs. He's a very, very gregarious dog. He's just very funny to look at, too. He's got such a distinguishable just character. He looks like a cartoon. He looks like a walking cartoon. He's a big orange bear with no ears and no tongue. And he's just this funny looking. His butt end is like 3 inches higher than his front end, so he almost looks like a panther. But he's, you know, and he's this odd, you know, long-haired, like longer haired orange, not like a true French Mastiff that have short hair.
Right.
He's got like an undercoat, and he's just such an interesting dog, and everybody just loves him. So we've taken Hooch everywhere. Valley Achievement Center for Autistic Youth, that was our favorite place because most of these kids have never met a dog. Being that they're nonverbal autistic, they have a tough time with boundaries and with aggression. I think aggression is kind of a bad word. They don't understand how to give or receive certain types of affection, so it can come out, in outbursts of physical pressure. They can be imposing on a dog, but Hooch Hooch doesn't mind the loud screams. I mean, you guys saw him at the Hero Dog Awards where he repelled from the audience cheers.
I know. He wanted to go back off stage. He was like, I didn't need no award.
That's how he reacts to energy. So, dogs are creatures that rely on a perception of energy. Yes. And when that big eruption of applause, he was unfamiliar with that. So it threw him back into almost a fight or flight state. So that's just, he'd never had that kind of a round of applause. But with kids, man, he just kind of gets in this therapy mode where he just lays on the ground and the kids can kind of do whatever they want with him. They can learn how to pet a dog, learn how to be affectionate with a dog, and it's really, really wonderful watching him do that. And it's wonderful when he comes out of his shell and the kids come out of their shells kind of at the same time, because Hooch can also he has his moments where a lot of people assume he's forgotten what happened to him, and I think it's those moments of really high intensity energy, like when the round of applause happened, that he remembers what happened to him. I think it was probably a very stressful, post-traumatic stress inducing scenario.
Right.
And, for instance, whenever there's a broom out and anybody's got a stick in their hand, Hooch runs and hides and just shakes, glues himself to the ground and starts shaking. So he hasn't forgotten it, but he perseveres through it, and that's one of the lessons that I love about Hooch.
Why do you think his story touched so many that propelled him really to win so big in 2016?
Well, I think Hooch has been through an unspeakable act of human awfulness. I mean, somebody has a deplorable human being who obviously doesn't value any of the things most of us hold dear. Doesn't respect life, and not only doesn't respect life, but is so calculated and sick and cruel that they would go through the act of severing a dog's tongue. It's such we all picture it. Whenever people realize that he doesn't have a tongue, or that we tell them that he doesn't have a tongue, there's a universal reaction, which is people either get tremendously sad or they want to kill somebody. And for us, killing somebody's not an option.
Not at all.
But getting proactive, it is. And, exalting dogs like Hooch, that is an option. And showcasing their resilience is an option. And showcasing his triumph, like you guys were able to help us do, is an option. And I think people related, it's such a, oh my God, I cannot believe that happened to him, look at him now situation where he's gone from receiving, the utmost worst from mankind, and then with the American Hero Dog Award, receiving the utmost best from mankind.
I love that. It was a triumph for so many who want to eliminate abuse and cruelty from our world. I always say, Zach, you can't protect what you don't love. You can't love what you don't know. And I'm so grateful to you for letting us all know the story of Hooch, loving Hooch, and then I'm hoping that it changes lives so people can get involved and help build a better world, a world without cruelty, which we all dream and aspire to.
Yeah, and I really do think that because of organizations like ours and yours, that transition, that paradigm shift is occurring. People view their animals more like family than they ever have, and really, what I like to say is that dogs are medicine. Dogs are medicine, and they are our teachers, our therapists, our physical trainers, our unconditional lovers. They are so much to us if we just have the ability to listen. If we can dumb ourselves down just a bit to accept the advice of a dog and watch how a dog goes through life, we can pick up endless advice and real practical advice on how to cope with the world. Dogs have it dialed in. They have figured out how to cope with the world, and we could definitely take a page out of their book. Hooch's latest program has been our prison program. We've taken him in a couple times with us, and the people who I think are the most affected by his story are our inmates. I've never seen a stronger reaction from a group of people than when our inmates find out that Hooch has no tongue. They almost seem more affected than anybody else that we run his story by. It's kind of interesting. A lot of people don't think there's much compassion in prison, but there definitely is, and Hooch helps bring it out.
Well, Zach, we're about out of time today. I want to, first of all, thank you for sharing your personal journey with us, for becoming such a passionate animal advocate. Thank you for all your efforts you do to change the world. How can our listeners learn more about your work? Can you give us our website again?
Yeah, the best thing you can do is go to marleysmutts.org. Mm-hmm. We have a number of different programs, from our Positive Change in Humane Canine Training program to, real extensive spay and neuter, to rescue rehab, to our Miracle Mutts, which is our educational program, which goes 3 days a week. We have a Barks and Books program. We got all kinds of things going on. So whatever you're interested in, we got something for you at marleysmutts.org.
That's wonderful, Zach. Thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks so much for really changing the world.
Well, I'll see you on the 15th, right? Or on the, 16th?
Absolutely. We'll be there celebrating service dogs, so thank you.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
It'd be wonderful, Zach. Thanks for all you do, and give Hooch a big hug from me.
You got it. We'll see you soon.
That's
Thanks
great.
Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thank you. Well, friends,
what an incredible story. From Zach's personal struggles to a special bond with Hooch, this episode brought out all the emotions. And friends, we're so proud to have recognized Hooch at our 2016 Hero Dog Awards. The awards were created to celebrate dogs just like him, dogs who have overcome the odds to do incredible things. I hope that you'll continue to follow along with American Humane as we prepare for the 2018 Hero Dog Awards, a star-studded, tail-wagging awards show in sunny California this fall. And remember, this week, friends, and every week, I'm loving animals, and I hope you do too. I'll see you next week for a brand new episode.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.